I'm going to try and talk about how I would link microcontroller programming and laptop hacking to education. But the reason I'm trying to say this stuff is so that you tell me how I'm wrong. But if you can kind of keep that towards the end, there's an early half which is more me delivering stuff, and we'll shift into a latter half which is me trying to gather knowledge from you. I'm trying to go through connecting the work that I've done and the knowledge that I've got about microcontrollers to how it could be useful for people in schools, really. So if I can get this to proceed, yeah. Have you got a new slide?
Yep, we have.
Excellent. Okay, so Shrimping kicked off initially as a sort of thing around laptops and recycling them and teaching people to, install open source operating systems on them and kind of making them more useful than doorstops. And what kind of came out of that was a design for a circuit that we could use to hack laptops that didn't cost anything. Because if you add an Arduino to a laptop that doesn't cost anything, it now costs you 15 quid. The other thing that sort of driven it was meeting with Alan all those years ago and going to an Arduino, to try and run an Arduino workshop at Our Lady. And we had a whole load of computers there that were sort of administratively locked down over the half-term holiday, I think it was. And also a whole load of Arduinos that the kids couldn't take home with them because they were kind of school asset. So I was trying to solve all those problems, and so figured out, okay, let's get the community to give us free computers, and that means we've got a studio to hack things with. And then let's try and find a way of making Arduinos that are as cheap as possible. And these are now £1.40 each. Hopefully this is now starting to be more like school ready. But the centre of the project is as much about curating knowledge as anything else. So this isn't a circuit that I own. It's not, I wouldn't claim to own it, and I don't want to own it. But that's why getting good insights from your side of the fence as to what sort of materials do you need and what kind of knowledge will people need would be really useful. So what I've got in mind is putting together some kind of progressive lesson plan. It kicks off with, on the left you can see that pretty well the most minimal Arduino compatible circuit you can build. Yeah, so on the left you've got incredibly minimal circuit, and the aim of that would be to sort of get a bunch of components out on the desks and learn the basics of breadboarding and how the rows together, push that many components in and be able to program it and make it blink an LED, for example. The second example circuit is more like something you'd actually use for real because it's got some extra protection in place, and it's also got wires over the top that you can see there that help it, that give it an analog reference voltage, which means it can sense things basically, like dependent resistors and things like that. You could plug in and they would then work. Without those wires it wouldn't. So that's in the second frame there. You can see pretty well the finished circuit at the heart of lots of different projects. And as you slide over to the right, the third and fourth frames show how you might program something that's been soldered onto stripboard, and how something might run if it was a sort of self-contained toy or project after you've finished it. And all of those things have an awful lot in common. They're the same circuit, and hopefully we'll be able to sort of guide people through, starting with basically a bag of components through to, at the heart of things, an Arduino, but probably more importantly an actual project that does something. So what I was going to go through very simply to start with was a walkthrough of something I've mentioned to many of you, I think, which is a way of teaching programming possibly that is better than this. This is the blink sketch. You probably have seen it if you've worked with Arduino. It just makes a light blink, but it is already forcing you to comprehend quite a lot of concepts simultaneously, programming concepts. So for example, the first word here, void, is immediately confusing, and it could take me quite a while to explain really what that means to anyone. And it's a bit unsatisfactory to just say, oh, well, forget about that. Don't worry about that. You know, it's just a way of undermining people's comprehension, I think. So what I'm hoping to do is to be able to have a more incremental disclosure sort of model. And this is from a paper that I've been writing where some people have been studying how people learning about programming can struggle. And typical languages, you've got loads to learn before you can do anything. And they've got really hard syntax, kind of pointless syntax most of the time. So what Richard proposes, sorry, at the bottom should be highlighted, building from one thing to the next, having immediate direct manipulation pretty well at every stage if you can, from activities where you can see consequences through to higher level programming concepts. So for the time being, what I'm going to do is just launch Python. Python's a nice interactive shell, or this provides an interactive shell, so that you can explore individual sort of concepts like what's a value. Well, I'm typing 1 there. The computer reports what it understands by that. Well, it understands 1. 2 plus 3. Sure enough, it understands 5. You can introduce sort of individual variable, types of values that aren't just numbers as well. Possibly something like, let's try something a bit more complicated. So you get the idea of maybe an operator there and what plus could do to various different kinds of values. You could say something like introduce naming, the fact that giving things names is a useful thing to do. So game equals Simon Says. Okay, and then I can refer to that with the name game from here on in. And so the idea is to be able to progressively introduce individual programming concepts that people working at a terminal can confirm for themselves. And it gets particularly interesting when you start to work with Arduino and Fermata, I believe. So we can go something like this, Fermata import Arduino. And now I can say, okay, well, I'm going to create something. I'm going to give it a friendly name, Shrimp. I know it's going to be an Arduino. And from inspection of the Arduino IDE, I know that on my machine, it would be different on yours, that there's a device attached to TTY USB 0. So what that's going to do is going to connect to my Arduino board, or as a Shrimp in this case. So I can then say something like, okay, well, I'm going to create something to call, and I'm going to call it an LED. I'm going to give it the get hold of it from the Shrimp. It's going to be a digital pin, and it's going to be number 13. And then LED, right, 1. Okay, so the important thing to note here, is this going to work? Okay, I don't know if you can see this. The cable's not long enough. How depressing. There is a flashing LED anyway at the end of this cable. If it was just long enough. Can we get it to show? Maybe. There you go. So you can kind of incrementally proceed from there. Okay, right. So the basic concept here, incremental disclosure, you should be able to interact.
Yeah, I got a slide on there now.
Should be able to interactively explore individual things like a value, what a type is, what kind of expressions are, names, variables, steps, functions, loops. And what you can do is start from scratch and get all of the concepts that you need to be able to write Blink. So you can literally type individual lines into the interactive interpreter and prove that they do what you would think they would do. And that's what's on screen right now is equivalent to Blink, but it's been constructed from scratch. So you would show LED write 1. Look, the LED goes on. You say sleep 1. Look, it goes away for a second and then comes back, and so on, so on. So you can interactively get up to that point.
Kevin?
Yes.
Right, Ben and I are just wondering, just go back a slide.
Yeah.
So from PyFormata and from Time, are they libraries or modules?
Modules.
I like the way you hesitated. So Arduino is a module within PyFormata. Which
Arduino is I think it's kind of an object in PyFormata, but yeah, it's a part of the PyFormata library stroke module. I wish I knew what the proper words were in Python. I don't.
Okay, I'm assuming that PyFormata is a library. I know Time is a module because that's one I've used before.
Great, yeah. I think module and library is sort of exchangeable because library is a more general term that you would use in a lot of languages.
Yeah.
And Python probably calls them modules because that's how they're distributed.
Okay.
They're distributed as a file with a whole load of things in them, basically.
Just think of it as a basket of fruit with an apple in it.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. Don't forget, we've got the chat window. We can type things in as well off the air in the chat window.
So I don't know if this convinces anyone in education or outside of education. I know, generally speaking, Arduino people are a bit anti Fermata and remote controlling Arduinos, and they're very keen on, well, the whole point of it is that the code runs on the microcontroller. I'm not sure that is the whole point of it. I think the whole point of it is, can you understand it? And if this is a useful intermediary step, then it would be worth doing. So this is one thing that I was going to run live at Raspberry Pi, potentially, is start with an empty breadboard, shove the components in, then program it, and make an LED flash pretty well, interactively, with the aim of, to some extent, educating all of the people in the venue about programming, because not everybody is a programmer. I think a lot of people there are interested or different levels of skill, and it's nice to literally be able to show you everything you need to know from scratch to be able to achieve something as simple as flashing an LED. So the other angle on this, certainly for the university work that I'm doing, is about STEM uptake. And I've done some digging around to try and find evidence about this, and what's happening seems to be fewer and fewer students are interested in science, technology, education and maths, and the trend is continuing to be negative. And countries who are in some ways more advanced than us along a technology line, like Japan, is even worse. There's even fewer people wanting to identify with engineers and scientists and so on. And so my pitch is that connecting kids and adults to make a culture is at least one way of responding to what people are saying they want, which is to say, engineering and science and so on can itself be quite alienating. It seems to be sort of fetishistic in its own right, when you just learn endless formulae and so on without putting it in context. And maker culture seems to be completely the opposite. It seems to be about experimentation, about empathy with individuals and users and the human experience, and it's immediately contextualized. There's almost no decontextualized work going on in maker culture at all, because people are all about what's the outcome, what happens, what's it for.
Kevin?
Kevin? What I have been doing... Sorry, are you saying something?
Yeah, it's Alan. I mean, I'm nowhere near education to the same level that you are, but one thing I have noticed is that it's the words that people use sometimes. You know, if you say to children, who fancies engineering? When you say that word, it brings up different connotations for different people.
Yeah.
That's the word geek. You know, some people they hear the word geek and think, oh, that sounds like something I'd like to be part of. Or other people hear the word geek and they think, oh, I've only ever heard that used in a derogatory context before, so that I don't want to be associated with that kind of thing. Whereas experiences, you know, like the maker experience that you're talking about, generally people who come along and take part in these kind of things only ever seem to mostly have positive experiences. Whereas with language, it's a lot more subjective, isn't it? It's a lot more open into interpretation. That's in case you didn't know what subjective was.
Absolutely, and I was surprised actually to find that being an inventor, because I'm obsessed with being an inventor, I really like it. Being an inventor is just not on the short list of things that kids are particularly interested in. If you look at stats, and again, it might be the way they ask the question. True, but you know, my attempt previously to run workshops and engage people has been the same as I was having a conversation with one of the guys who's written the Arduino books this morning, along exactly the same lines. You know, maybe it doesn't need to be a purposeful project that you offer people, and because he's interested in these things in their own right. You know, it's look, you can now control an LED and make it flash. It's not fundamentally interesting until you put it in the context of, well, why would I care, and what would I do with it?
Take that and phrase that as a question. Take two different classes, you know, your control group and your thing. You say, hey, we're going to do some engineering this afternoon. Who'd like to come and join me? Oh, right. Yeah. You get blank expressions. Whereas you say, hey, we're going to build something afterwards. It's going to be really exciting. And you can use powerful, loaded language, but not use the word engineering, geek, STEM, science. And you'll probably find you actually get a more positive response.
100%, and this is hopefully intended to be done backwards. You know, in that we're not starting with scientific principles. We're not starting with, hey, you need to learn this before you achieve anything. It's more the other way around, that you get exposed to a context that you might care about, and you end up having to solve science problems just because they're real problems, and they turn out to be, you know, science as a way of knowing rather than as a subject. So anyway, in a sense, I'm moving away from this stuff, which is what I did before, and more towards stuff like stuff that has a context where you can say to people, well, what do you get out at the end? If you sit down with us, and it's partly in the context of maker events and, you know, OSH camp and OD camp and all this stuff, sit down with us and make something, and this is what you're going to take home. Is a completely different story from
just a quick one then. I was asked in school if I wanted to start the robotics club, you know, because no one teacher wants to do it.
Yeah.
We got like 10 Lego kids there with robotics. And, well, the head embarrassed me a little bit this morning, really, when he said, so, Mr. Link, do you want to speak to me about the robotics? I said, yeah, sure, I can. What do you want me to say? So why did you get into robotics? And I went, well, why did I get into robotics? Because I love when you do something, something happens, you know.
Yeah.
I said, you know, put action into it and something happens. And so do you see yourself as being a geek then, sir? That's what the head asked me, and I went, oh, yeah, why not? I'll tell you, I'm a geek, you know, when it comes to loads of things, you know, because a geek is actually a positive thing. He said, and the kids looked at me then, they were going, whoa, you know, the eye frown sort of thing. I said, listen, I said, if we just do it, a geek is just someone who likes something. I said, but we've got some football geeks in here, haven't we? And they all went, well, we went silent. I said, that's just the same way. If I asked you over there now, what's Dwayne Rooney's shoe size, you'll tell me that now. And he went, oh yeah, I would. I said, that's just being a geek, just the way I like to be a geek with electronics and taking things apart and getting things working. And then guess what I had then? I had an in-date with like 20 students who want to do this now, you know. So I have to vet through who's really the ones who are interested. And then that after sort of lunchtime, all of a sudden there was 40 students outside my room. When is the Lego Club starting, sir? And I went, what do you mean when's the Lego Club starting? They're really keen on it now, so I have to, you know, work something out there with Lego Club, you know.
Absolutely.
And that's going to be a great one. So that's why, you know, when I spoke to my head after that, I said, look, I want to get the shrimp into school and everything like that. And he said, well, speak to me about after half term and we'll see where we go from there, you know.
Great. Well, hopefully we should be able to get, I mean, this shows you a bit of an evolution of thinking around a particular project. And this is another thing that I'd really like to be led by your ideas and the kids' ideas as well, which is, so starting with a Simon, which you probably would remember, MB Games.
Yeah, that'd be a good one, yeah.
Thing. Flashes, and it makes a tune.
I tried suing them, but I just didn't get anywhere.
Say that again, Simon?
I said I tried suing them for name infringement, but I never got anywhere.
Yes. I don't think how on earth they thought they were going to own the name Simon, I don't know, but they got away with it. So what I've got on the top left is one that it's not actually the one that I bought, but I just bought one recently. It's a bit fetishistic, I will admit. And then I figured out that you can get relatively cheap arcade illuminated arcade buttons from China, so that could be a useful component of a kit, especially with if you've got access to laser cutters, or indeed you can just get a batch of boxes and housings cut somewhere, and then just make sure that there's plenty of bits of pre-cut MDF for the project. But also working with Mike Cook, who's another Arduino aficionado, just way ahead of me really. He started to think about, well, how could you get it down to be more like a real maker project, more hacked together, and so this is some prototyping he's been doing with ping pong balls, half ping pong balls, and RGB LEDs stuck on the top of them, and buttons stuck on the bottom, and they make perfectly good backlit buttons, and then you're talking more like 20p a button or something, or 30p a button instead of 160 for the other ones. So the aim again is this sort of curating of knowledge, which is to say we'll have a crack at getting it working, getting something working. We might have a sort of a semi-expensive demo model, but the aim would be to try and figure out how to get the cost down so that you've got your shrimp as a classroom, participant in the classroom. You've got a shrimp, and then you just add £1.50's worth of components, and you've got a purposeful project. It does something. Examples that are floating around at the moment. No idea what feedback is likely to be on these, but stylophone, a thing that where you just touch different parts of a kind of keyboard with a pen, with a wire basically on it, and then it plays tunes. Electronic dice, there's lots of different ways of doing that. One that I'm quite interested in is with a servo, so that you have a card that rotates and it reveals a particular segment through the window. Instead of just rolling a dice or maybe having LEDs, you can have LEDs as well, lighting up to light up the dice shape. But that then has a kind of craft element, which is to make the card, and what do you write on it, and what are the different decisions or the different options, the 6 options that you get when you shake it. Steady hand game's got a craft element too, which is the shape of the wire, possibly. Might be a suitable gift for somebody at that point if you want to make something for family, friends. You bend it into the shape of a ballerina because somebody is a ballerina, and again in a nice laser cut box. Actually, something you might want to have on the mantelpiece. Persistent vision toy, I think partly led just by people's interest in that, and it's cheap. It's a bunch of LEDs and a couple of tilt switches, and then you're done. So I need lots of ideas like that and work through them in sequence and try and get them down to this price point and get them supported with the right materials. And culturally resonant ideas with students especially. Somebody was saying, okay, well, it doesn't have to be purposeful, like a game that does something meaningful. It could just be something that's pretty, or that that's going to be relevant for some people. A lot of people young people seem to be interested in mobile phones. So it is possible to try and get the budget down on an Android dock, possibly, so that it could be within project range. But it's looking quite expensive, that at the moment. But again, it could be a class project where people work together to design something that augments their mobile phone to do something crazy. So yeah, keen to get your thoughts on that. I'll just skip through the last two because each one is a discussion point that I'd like to raise with you. This is one. It's like, what are the projects that make sense? The next one is, what should we do at Raspberry Tech Jam? And then lastly, designing for the classroom. What stuff are you going to need? So I'll skip out from there and we'll share back the video.
Kevin?
Yes.
Sorry. I said that 6 times and I think we didn't have our microphone on. I've been mentioning to some of the kids about the idea of tweeting the Raspberry Pi to get it to drive a little car around a track. Is that going to be possible on Arduino? Is that something that's doable within a price range?
I've been looking at Ethernet, and it looks like about another £6.50 for Ethernet. Right. If you want to have that wireless, it does tend, the numbers start to go up the more you're trying to achieve. So at the moment, wireless, go on.
The issue is when I mention it to the kids that they might be able to control something by texting or by tweeting in a command, they think that's brilliant. The idea that they're allowed to get their mobile phones out in a lesson and it will be so productive, they think is wild.
Is that like the Bubblino, is it?
Yeah. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
exactly the same principle. You have like a hashtag that would be something like patlink forward, patlink backwards, patlink cook the rice, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Cook the rice now, Pat.
Yeah, nearly. Yeah, no, because that's actually something that I had in mind as well. With that what Ben just said. So when they think they're actually doing something like that, and you go, okay, who in the classroom just sent that message through? Because that just flashed, something like that. But then I thought you can actually make quite a game out of it as well. Then with them, because when I was at university, we done like a blogging thing, and you had to blog, and some people didn't click onto it. That the tutor checked every Sunday night the blog. So all you had to do was Sunday night, if you wanted to, just sit there and send a blog message, and they go, "Oh, he's been active on his blog." I said, "No, I said you're forgetting. They look at it once they see that message come through. They can just scroll back and check dates. So if you don't log it every day to your blog and update it, it's recorded, and they go, "Oh yeah," and that's the same there. That's why I like it, when you do anything electronically, because it's tagged,
Projects like having them put a message up in LEDs or changing the colour of LEDs at the front of the classroom, anything where they're texting in a message and everybody can see what they've done. They think stuff like that's superb, and it's so collaborative and collective. It sells really well.
Great. So a basic kind of entry level for something like that, and just in raw parts. I'm guessing you could use a shrimp and an Ethernet shield, which is about £6.50, and just whatever display output you want attached as well. You've got LCD screens that are £6 to £10, I suppose. You can get them probably cheaper than that. LED screens. There are things like the LOL shield, which you should be able to easily get hold of.
Kevin?
LOL is short for lots of LEDs.
Kevin?
Yeah.
Kevin, I'm sorry to keep interrupting. I know you're trying to go through those slides.
I've finished.
All I'm suggesting is it something that's within reach, do you think? If we're trying to build these projects up from very simple starts, like the Blink project, how many projects do you think we'd have to work through before the kids were at a level where they could? And I'm not saying any one of those is more preferable than the other, but anything collaborative, if we can be working towards that or towards robotics, I think that'll fire up their imaginations.
Great, yeah. It's a bit of a hard question because you can sort of just reveal it in some ways. It's certainly the way of working that is common in the Arduino community is to find somebody who's already done it. You pretty well copy the circuit, you copy the code, and then it's running. And you might or might not understand really what it's doing, but you've made it. It's fully functioning.
I think it's great, the idea of starting very simple. I think that's really good because obviously I need to think about differentiation and I need everybody in the class to be able to achieve something that lesson. But it'd also be great if we have some kind of end result. So within 5 weeks, you should be able to make and then something spectacular they can see that's within their range. Over a 5-week, 6-week period, perhaps.
Well, after 5-6 weeks, you could probably expect them to have lights that blink on and off in different sequences, couldn't you? Or something like that. Or maybe if you have a color-changing LED in there, so they can, function in such a manner that, it changes or something like that. I think
Pat, can you think of something that would fire them up, though? I'd like to be able to kind of show them something.
Yeah, that's why I'm thinking about that wind turbine project that I said. With the where it turns and spins, and you use the 8-bit sort of thing to display messages and stuff like that.
That's a great idea.
That's a great idea. And screen-wise, what I thought, maybe it's possible to hack into the Promethean boards, because I got in both my classrooms, in my workshop and in my classroom, because I like a double room, and I've got 2 Promethean boards in there, and I was looking, there must be a way to interface into that, so I don't have to actually have it,
We have the active expression bricks. Do you have those?
I'm not too sure because I'm only just getting around with those Promethean boards because they were brand new installed in September,
I've got the bricks. When I finally visit your school, I have to bring a pack with me to show you because they're superb. But I love the idea that there's a fan at the front of the classroom and they can text in, hello 7E, and it pops up at the front.
Exactly, that'd be great. Because my form class comes in, and the way our form group is set up is a completely different manner. It goes from 7 to 11, So I've got like a real mixture in there, and all the teachers looked at me when I got my form group because I've got actually 11 Year 11s in my form group, and we have to give them each half an hour of our own personal time, unpaid. And I just went to him, impossible. And he went, what do you mean? I said, impossible. So they gave me another teacher to come in and help me with that, I said, NQT, you can't expect, I said, I couldn't even find that time in the week,
Yeah, I know what you mean.
Yeah, so it's obviously going to be great for them if they can do things like that, because I can probably get loads of them interested in that,
Are you thinking of doing these projects during farm time then?
So, well, I was going to think about, because at the moment I'm quite struggling, with because I've got my GCSE classes, so I'm I have to teach geography and maths on top of it, and it's like horrendous, until I get a GCSE class.
Because in terms of contact time, I think I'm in a better position than everybody, unless you can tell me I'm wrong. I've got robotics club, so I've got 2 hours a week with one school, 2 hours with the other. I've got actual curriculum time, 2 hours a week on one site, and so that's without them kind of.
Yeah.
And that's not curriculum time. That's not IT lessons. That's all kind of on top of their IT lessons.
Just to bring it back towards Kevin's such a focus or discussion, I see one of the ways forward now, Kevin, is we need to run a workshop somewhere with a small bunch of learners to try this and put this thing into practice, and then keep some of the products photographs so we can use them to inspire others, because we show them the circuit boards as they are, and some of the audience we have here would look at that and go like, whoa, but they're not going to be glamorous or attractive to everybody. Whereas if you've got something like that you've then customized an existing toy, whether that's a car or a cuddly toy or a frog or whatever it is that's now got flashing lights or pipe cleaners, you can buy all these things like googly eyes, you can stick it on, all that kind of thing. It's gonna,
why not? Does Liverpool, we could probably get them to do on a Saturday or something like that there, in Saturday, and then do like this hangout thing and re-advertise it and do it live, sort of thing, for people who can't make it so they can join in.
One other thing you might want to think about is if you don't want to organise a special event, you could crash in on another one. I think Adrian McEwen, is it Adrian McEwen?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's Adrian McEwen, yeah.
So I'm pretty sure he's going to a robotics workshop at MadLab on October the 27th. It's a Saturday. And it's advertised as basically just come along, bring some old toys, we'll do some toy hacking. Be a great one to try the ShrimpingIt. Bring stuff along and say to people, just see what you can do with this.
So when's that one?
Saturday, the 27th of October at MadLab. It's part of the Manchester Science Festival.
Oh, okay, I have to see if I can make that one then. 27th of October.
There's also an Internet of Things How Do We Know. I need to remember exactly when it is, but that's happening at Does Liverpool, I think. Internet of Things. Hopefully it's already advertised, otherwise I don't know when it is. Just searching for it online. November 3rd to 4th.
Okay. That's the half-term holiday week, I think, which is a great time to have that kind of thing.
I'm signed up for Arduino, so I'm just waiting to get the okay for the tickets to come through, so I definitely want to do the Arduino one.
So yeah, that's the same one. Is it? It does Liverpool.
I'm going this Saturday as well to the one in Warrington, the TD Lug one.
Okay.
Yeah. The Digital Lifestyles event.
Yeah, that's the one. Yeah.
Ian Dixon is running. Is it Ian Dixon? Kevin, so next steps forward. Do you feel now we need proof of concept? We need put a bunch of people together, see what kind of thing you can create with this.
Yeah. So Kevin, as well. As I say, I've got 2 hours a week for the next 6 weeks with them. I've got a budget ready. Do you have an idea of like where I can be to? It's not high. It'd be great if you're looking to get something started and run through some bugs. I've no pressure at all. I spoke to the head today, and she doesn't mind us. If we don't get anything out of the next 6 weeks, she doesn't seem that bothered as long as they're enjoying themselves and fairly productive.
Well, probably the easiest summary of what the sort of shrimp strategy could offer you would be that you get to do stuff you would ordinarily do with Arduino. This is until we've got more material, but you can do anything you'd ordinarily do with Arduino, with the difference being that the kids could afford to take it home, or the school could afford to let the kids take it home, because we're talking about much smaller bill of materials. So if you wanted to follow that route, you can find a million projects out there where Arduino has been used to do something. Find one that you think is inspiring and that connects to sort of interest that you know exists in your class or in your group. And you could, if you want, prototype it with Arduino, because it's a nice easy way to get started, and then switch to, okay, and now we're building our own circuit, and now we're soldering it, and then take it home.
So one of the things, I mean, we've seen lights, and you talked about having an analog sensor for LDRs and thermistors and things like that. Are you looking at any ways of bringing down the price barrier towards controlling motors? Because with motors, it's always a pain. You've got to have something that's going to buffer and have enough power to drive even the smallest motor. Are there any low-cost ways of addressing that?
Well, there's quite a few, and it just depends what application you're planning to use it for. So the H-bridge chips themselves are not particularly expensive. And what that does is it allows you to drive a motor either forward or backwards. Even more cheaply than that, if you know that you're only ever going to want to drive it forwards, is a transistor. And you literally, for many projects, you could drive a motor straight off of USB, straight off of your computer, or indeed straight off of a battery. As long as it's only going forward, it's an extremely simple circuit. If you're going forward or backwards, you need a H-bridge.
Kevin, that's the kind of thing I'm saying, really. If I know that there's only it says 7 or 8 lessons, and I know that it leads from Blink to some kind of motorized toy, some kind of car, that would be ideal for me.
Yeah.
It's the structure that I need, knowing that from this starting point, we will have this end product in the next 7-8 weeks.
What do you think about something? So it's a matter of choosing, really, because we could work up any one of these sort of projects. So at the moment, I've got a short list that may or may not have, some wow things in it. I don't know, but obviously something like a Simon memory game, that's relatively easy to put together.
One of the things is, for a lot of children, this will be their first experience of doing anything like this, even just Blink. And for some children, if we're talking about children, that could just be enough for their first experience.
Yeah.
For you, you're thinking, well, I've been doing this kind of thing for 20 years or more. I want something a bit more stimulating and interesting than that. And that's fine. And for some kids, yeah, that's what they'll want. But simple is fine to begin with, and to say, look, and here's a cookbook here with lots of recipes in. You can take this, you can add this in. What would happen if you do this? What happens if you add that in? What happens if you link 3D circuits together? Can you think of a way of sending a message, communicating, and giving them like signposts in different directions that they can then go and explore, but without giving them the answers?
Well, I think that's right. I guess my instinct is, and it's partly connected to what I've been trying to learn about through research papers, which is, it's a long way from a classroom, I'll have to admit, is that if that's the only experience you get of this world, if you think that what electronics is about, for example, is about learning these things in a vacuum and not seeing them connect to something, I think it's a bit of a shame, because partly you don't then see the end-to-end process that you might want to replicate yourself. And that end-to-end process might be, and you can see how these things were built up from bits to a thing that you can do something with. It's at this point, it's a real thing. It's not to say that's the only thing you would build, and in fact, it should be so easy for you to build that thing, and so relatively cheap, that you could build that and then decide what you really want to build.
So the next test really should be the October Raspberry Jam on the 1st of October, where you've got a bunch of geeks or people who are interested in this kind of thing, already got a bit of a know-how. Let's see what we can do in an evening. Let's see what ideas these groups come out of. Sorry, ideas that come out of these groups that we can then use and then take forward. Yeah.
Absolutely. So I think actually it's relatively easy to meet the demand that you're describing, Alan, which is if you simply want to get exposure to move a servo, flash an LED, and so on. That's really pretty easy to establish material for and to work through, and it's very cheap as well. I guess my feeling is that it will be clearer to people where they would get to and what the activity is for and about if there's something that's more like a product. And it's not to say that you have to spend all of your time working towards a product. It's more that here is a product which is built in this way, so you can understand why you're doing these early steps. And if you don't like that product, that's fine, because that's not the product you have to build. But you can at least see that it arrives at an endpoint, and the endpoint is a complete experience.
Can I come in at this point? Yeah, that's one of the main things. Now I want to use a Raspberry Pi because you can program it in Scratch, and therefore at primary level and the level I'm at, I think that'll be a very good introduction. But I can't afford for everybody to take a Raspberry Pi home. Yeah, the school can't donate it to everybody who turns up at the code club, and you can't really expect their parents to fork out £50. But you could have a thing where it's £5 to join the club and to pay for your Arduino bits, and therefore you can take that home with you. And I think, like a Simon game, if that was the project, or you had a set of projects that you said, right, we could build a Simon game, we can have the buzzers with the ping pong balls in them, so that's very cheap, and they can take that away with them. What they do with it after that, once you've shown them the possibilities, I think, it's great, because you've got it then. They'll either run with it, or they'll just put it in the bedroom and never use it again, but at least they've had the opportunity.
I would argue that different things drive different people. So for some people, it'll be the fact that they've got the ownership, that they own this thing, they can take it home, will be the driving force for them. For others, it'll be, doesn't matter if they don't own it, it's the fact that, wow, this thing was so complicated, and I got to build it. Okay, sure, I'd like to take it home, but it was more important that
I found quite, Alan, to be honest, is that pride of ownership, yeah? In my school, that's really kicked off since I've come there. Because I taught all the kids it's pride of ownership, so if you treat something good, it's going to be there for a long time, and that's really kicked off with them, on all the projects that I've started. Is this material-wise? And I said to them, like, even the project booklets, I said, they're yours, your name goes on the front, you look after them. If you disface them, if you don't fill them in properly, if you keep them rough, I can't read it, I can't mark it. And they were like, oh, okay. There's a shocked look on their face, because I just said, I embarrassed one of them. I just picked his booklet up and said, this was lesson 1, this was lesson 2, and I showed 2 blank pages, and they went, oh, he hasn't done nothing. I said, exactly. So what can Sir mark if he's done nothing?
I agree that for a majority of people, actually taking something tangible away that you can then say, look, I built this from nothing, is a key motivator. But for some people, that's not always practical, and it's not always the most important. If 3 people build something in a group, only one really can take that item away. But yeah, what you own there is the experience. The 3 of us built this thing together.
There's definitely going to be a compromise, and there ought to be a compromise. If there's an opportunity to build something more complicated and more impressive, and if it turns out that something that interacts with Twitter or a mobile phone is really a bit too expensive for everyone to take one home, then that's the point at which it would make sense to try and make it more of a sort of group activity and engage more people in producing one, and it's a class output, and that's fine too.
If we look in industry, we can see 300 or 400 people involved in the construction of a piece of aircraft that has a price tag of something like £42 million. We can't all, unfortunately, take one of them home, much as we'd like to, but we can all feel a sense of, when you bring a team together, you can build something much bigger and better and more sophisticated and complicated.
One thing I'm particularly keen on from the point of view of things being taken home is linked to identity in some ways, which is that you can communicate with other people what it is that you are doing, and maybe what it is that you're trying to learn to be good at, even, or what have you, because there's a tangible asset that you can share with people that is comprehensible for them as well, and they don't necessarily have to understand maths, but if you can say, well, I built this thing, and you can see what that is, and you can build it. It's a kind of, it's a pride of skill and so on that's possible to be shared just because there's an artifact involved. because you can show your mum and your gran or whoever.
Okay, just quick one. Sorry to be off on chat topic. I'm just going to sign off now because I'm going to have my tea now and I'll take my wife to work because she's on nights tonight, okay? So I'll catch up with you soon then, guys, okay?
Thanks, Pat.
Okay, nice speaking to you all. Okay, thank you.
Bye.
Thanks. Speak to you soon.
So, Kevin, I'd love to see the next step forward now, which is we need to get some people together and experience this thing ourselves. I mean, it's great looking at the images online, and I've got ideas formed in my head, but we need to put people together in a room now with the potential that this offers and see what can come out of it. It may be that in doing so you get a variety of people, and people say, oh, why has it got that on? Why can we not change it this way or add this on? And then this may be the first draft, and we go to the second issue and the third one, and then look for more opportunities to offer to people to see what they can do with it and then share.
Absolutely. So how would you like to kick that off? I mean, do you think just it just being a substitute for an Arduino is enough? I mean, people can build one and flash an LED. That is something we can do.
Kevin, I guess it depends on where you want to drive this to. But as I say, I'm ready to go and trial stuff in a classroom now. And all I need is to say that here's a price and here's 4 lessons worth of activities. Now, if they all fall flat on their face, I can feed back where it went wrong or what extra parts were needed, what extra kind of activities need to be in there. But it's whether you want it to be part of a classroom.
Prototyping, experimenting, so it goes along.
So it's prototyping and experimenting, but I do need an idea of structured kind of 4 lessons.
Okay.
Just so that I can say, if we start here, this is where we're going to...
How much detail do you need? Oh, I think I might have lost you. Oh, they've frozen. Can you?
I can hear you, Kevin, so you're still with me.
I think they've just stopped moving. At least Alan's smiling in the freeze frame.
Oh, yes. Well, while they're doing their thing, I'm just sort of thinking here now that I do want them to take something home, but we can't afford the Raspberry Pi. But I'm starting to think whether in my after-school clubs we alternate or each week. So one week we're working communally on our robot project that's got a Wi-Fi module on it on a Raspberry Pi. You know, it's going to cost a few pounds that basically the school pays for.
Yeah.
And the school gets to keep. It stays in school. And then the next week, having learnt to use Scratch to blink an LED and control things on a Pi, you then say, well, this is how you do it with your own little, Arduino chip, yes?
Yeah. Where
you know what, because the kids, they quite quickly translate. You were wondering about the differences in code. Would they understand? Well, I don't think there's actually that much difference between the pseudo C of pure Arduino, your little loop, and my Scratch program. If you put them side by side, they all say turn the LED on, wait, turn the LED off. Yeah. The syntax around it is in none of them with they're back. Is that complicated? So that's given me the idea now that to do it, that we'll work on a communal project and then we'll take a bit of time out. With the Arduino, I like the concept of going on the breadboard first. We can all do that, and then we get the soldering irons out, and everybody builds their own.
Yeah. Well, definitely, we should be able to have all of these, and I just need to figure out what level of detail somebody like Ben and yourself needs to be able to proceed. So, and if we can figure out maybe a kind of preferred project that would be the end point, then I can try and make sure that the sequence leads in the right direction, and we'll get you there.
One of the things is, I'm just looking outside and it's pitch dark. From about 5 or 6 o'clock, very soon, it's going to be very, very dark. And LEDs take on a whole new personality in darkness. In a bright little classroom, they don't, it's a totally different thing. But we're coming up to a time where we're talking about bonfires and Christmas lights and all these kind of things. It could literally be, how many of these things can you string together? Can you create ropes? Can you synchronize them so you've got like the bucket brigade type thing where when one lights, another one lights? I mean, what can we achieve? Can we have 5 people all with 5 different shrimping projects that try and synchronize them in some way together? I don't know. And it's simple. When you,
Kevin, with
Yeah.
the equipment that you're going to supply, could I just follow the ARDEX? You know, the Circ 01, Circ 02, Circ 03. If I could just do the first 4 of those with your equipment, I can get started, you see. And I'm just kind of keen, if it hasn't come across already, I'm just keen to get started, right?
Great. Yeah, no,
I'm a little bit too enthusiastic, I'm afraid.
Well, no, but the ARDEX stuff, 100%. I can send you an image that just shows what the relationship is between the names that Arduino uses and the pins on the little microcontroller, and that's well known, you know, and publicly documented. I'll send you that. Yeah, you can crack on with it. So if I can get you some in the post,
your box standard kit, will that cover the first 4? I think one of them involves a motor, so I can't imagine you've got that. But in terms of like,
in terms of kits to support the
which of the circuits, you know, is there 8 of them in that little booklet? Which could I do with only your equipment? Because I can obviously buy in the extra parts, but I just need to budget for that.
Okay.
That'd get me started, and I'd be able to.
It might make sense for you to budget for all of the parts that's not an Arduino, if you like. So I can get you a substitute Arduino that's incredibly cheap, and if you budget for everything else, then it's the simplest way. But I'd like to say, as I say, in the long or the near term, that I've got some of those project kits as well curated, but I can't claim that right now.
No, that's okay. I mean, honestly, the kit's on the net, and I can buy in the extra parts. I just kind of need a bit more. I don't really know where I'm going unless it's laid out. I've just got the time and I've got the money, and you can help me with everything else. We're golden.
So I think from what Alan was saying, something like a persistence of vision kit might be a nice one. Getting ready for bonfire night, the timing's good. The code is out there already. So yeah, we could aim at that, and it involves lots of LEDs. It's pretty easy to do.
It sounds, to me, it sounds ambitious. I mean, it's great to be ambitious, but to begin with, we need to be just getting lights and things flashing. And what can we do with these lights? Where can we put them? Where are they just going to flash on and off? Are they going to wait till something happens?
Yeah.
Are they all going to flash together? Are they going to synchronize? Can they communicate within it? You know, like I noticed once when I was in America in Central Park, they call them firebugs. How is it that they all seem to fireflies? How come they all seem to flash synchronously with each other? How do they do that? You know, is that something? What would be the advantage? Can we build a sculpture? You know, bring some art into this kind of thing.
Yeah.
No, honestly, let the kids be creative. And
absolutely.
It's all very well saying, look, we're going to build a persistence of vision thing.
Yeah, but
let them see first of all.
I think I've got a different way of thinking, different way around of thinking, and it might be just because I've got misunderstanding about how much effort these things really are for kids, but I'd be thinking, get a persistence of vision thing running because it's straightforward to do, and then decide what you're going to do with LEDs, because that's an example of what somebody else did with it.
Okay.
And you can use that as a reference because you can see it's a complete thing, it's a complete outcome. You can see all of the code because it's completely public and available to you, and indeed you saw it when you uploaded it to the board, so there's nothing hidden about it. And then the question is, would that demotivate them because it's too advanced to start with, and then they would feel maybe that's too much, and so you need to approach it from the other direction? Don't know. But there's no reason why they shouldn't have a persistence of vision kit running on, in lesson 3 or something. It's not a particularly problematic thing to build.
Another alternative is starting with some product analysis. If Pat was here, he'd be cheering. Yeah, like this. I've got these bicycle lights and head torches and stuff where you've got different patterns. You press one button, and you only have one button. You press a button, and it comes on. You press another button, and it goes on brighter. You press another button and it flashes 3 times, stops. But it's just getting the children used to thinking about the code, and so how would I get it so it flashes 3 times and stops, that kind of thing, before you, and then start saying, now creatively, how can we apply this to different things?
But you don't think you would see it as maybe a disadvantage to see a functioning example before being asked to seek your own?
No, I mean there's a balance there, which is, here are some things we can do. Now, how can we use all of these different things we've looked at to some sort of to build a creative outcome?
Yeah, absolutely. And so hopefully it sounds like we're probably violently agreeing here. And from a hardware point of view, there's nothing different between.
Sorry, I did say I've got a timeout here. I'm 12 minutes past my allotted time, so I better go back. But thank you very much indeed. It was great stuff, and I'll be in touch.
Yeah, Simon, I'll try and get you a copy of whatever Ben gets. We'll give you an option on that, and with the idea of you being able to give away kits as part of the after school club. So that's great.
No, I'm going to make a profit out of this. Bye-bye.
Catch you soon, Simon.
Just one thing as a teacher, I was trying to steer away from is saying, "Hey kids, you're all going to build one of these today. It's going to look like this. It's going to have 4 fingers and it's going to have a thumb, and this is exactly what it's going." Because where's the excitement of adventure? And I like to give the children opportunities to think, "Oh, what's it got to do?" Well, I want you all to build something today. Now, it's got to be something that you can attach onto the end of your arm. You can wash yourself with it. You can catch things with it. You can use it to salute people. It's a hand, or whatever.
Absolutely, and I'm going to, as much as possible, try and just be led by the style choices and the sequences that teachers are asking me for, and just deliver to that. So the more I can understand about what that sequence should look like for you, what you'd like to have in lesson 1, 2, 3, 4. It sounds like you want 5 lessons so far, Ben, roughly.
That'd be perfect, Kevin.
And
if I can have something, I mean, how soon do you think we could get up and running? When do you think could be my lesson number 1? Here's making blink.
Yeah, make it blink. I can get you stuff in the post. This week.
Very, very soon, yeah.
I've got
by
8
Friday. Have it by Friday.
Cool. I mean, really, there's obviously going to be some problems. There's obviously going to be some stuff that falls and it starts. But I'd rather kind of get started and have those mistakes and then learn from them early doors.
Great. Yeah. So I'll just get you the kits. That's the main thing. Give you access to start with, and then we'll try and figure out if you're going to need A4 sheets that say a particular thing or what have you. To steer people through.
You can continue this by email. Yeah, there's discussion.
Yeah.
I think Alan wants me to leave his house.
No, it's not. It's just I'm just thinking other people might want to watch this. They don't want to listen to us talking about it's going to be first class or second class stamps.
Yes. The fade out of the hangout.
Yeah. I mean, you can click the button now that says end broadcast, and we can talk outside.
Bye, everyone. Ending broadcast.